Hello, I'm David Ditch. I'm the director at the University of Kentucky Robinson Center for Appalachian Resource Sustainability, and we are in our Robinson Center greenhouse. And I have with me Crystal Sparks. She is headquartered here at the Robinson Center. She's with the University of Kentucky Department of Horticulture. She is a research project analyst. And Crystal, I think what we'll do is kind of take a quick tour of the greenhouse so you can share with folks what you've got going on in here. I notice you've got 5 tables with some sort of a black fabric across them. Can you explain what you're getting prepared to do?
Sure. These mats on top of the tables here are called aqua mats, and essentially what these mats do, you may want to pull in a little closer, anything, so you can see this, but it keeps a fiber in between here, and this is just kind of like, it's almost like a quilt batting. It's a cotton substance with the plastic underneath the bottom there, and these we absolutely saturate them with water, and this will hold water on the inside. Down in these tables here is a little water trough, and it keeps water in there, so when we put our seedlings on here, it will keep water in, and they can suck them up at all times.
So does this eliminate the need for someone to come in on a daily basis and water by hand?
Yeah.
They're getting water from the table itself,
Yes.
the mats.
Yes, they're getting watered from the table. These mats will hold in water, so this eliminates having to come in and water several times a day.
Great. And you'll start plants for here at the Robinson Center when?
We're actually going to start our plants here, our tomatoes and pepper plants. We're going to actually start those here the night that we start for our Mountain Monday series.
Okay,
So,
on March the
March
12th.
12th.
Very good. All right.
Yep.
What's this behind us with the lights on?
Okay, this is just a grow stand that we made here. This is just a metal type cart that we got, and then I went down to our local hardware store and bought these light ballasts. It's just got the fluorescent lights and then a heating mat on there. And you can even use heating pads or something like that if you have that at home. And we just hooked that up on there, and it's just a grow stand.
Okay, so this time of year, there's not enough natural light to really get these plants going.
Right.
Just add some few more hours of
We don't-
fluorescent lights. Good
Right.
enough?
Most of these seedlings require anywhere from 10 to 12 hours of light a day, and of course they're not going to get most of that natural sunlight, and then the heat, they're not going to get most of that they need, so it's really important when you're starting out your seedlings.
So you can put this in your basement, in
Yeah.
your garage, anywhere where you can control the heat.
Right.
So you've got an interesting set of a frame sort of a setup here. What looks like some sprinkler heads coming out of the bottom of the table. Describe what this is for.
Okay, this is it's a mister bed, and this is for propagated cuttings. We use it sometimes when we are doing, of course it's cleaned out right now, but it'll be full of sand and little bitty, it's called river gravel, and also vermiculite and perlite. But we use this when we do cuttings off of our blueberries or other landscape type of plants that we want to start from propagation.
So the idea is here with this mist system, you're constantly keeping the plant tissue moist.
Yes.
Not saturated,
Right,
but just enough
moist.
moisture
Right.
that those bare cuttings begin to develop some
Right,
roots.
it's just so that they develop
And so
a
what are
root
some of the
system.
crops that you would do that with?
Blueberries, we use this a whole lot for the blueberry production. We have used this for some of our brambles that we have tried also just to develop a root system on them. And then also other tree landscape cuttings that you may want to try to use. If you want to propagate hydrangeas or something like that, you can use this bed.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Well, let's walk over here on the other
Okay.
side of the mister
Alright.
and describe this next table.
Okay, these next tables right here that we have, these are the beds that we use when we start our seedlings out, and in the bottom of them we have heat mats. This is just a vermiculite perlite type mix, again with the river rock in the bottom, and then I've set these heat mats on top just to let you guys see what they look like. But these are things that you can purchase from some of your local garden stores will have them, and they're just seedling heat mats. And essentially this is the same thing. It's like we would use a heating pad. And this can get up to 85 degrees, and this will help our seeds germinate much quicker.
Okay, so it's a waterproof system, all kind of self-contained. You put your growth medium over the top of it, and keeps those roots nice and warm.
Yes, of course your seedlings are going to be into a flat, and then it will set just directly down on here. That way it will help to heat up from the bottom up, help those to germinate and get that root system going.
Great, great. So these can be purchased locally.
You can purchase
most of your
these.
seed catalogs will carry this type of an item.
Seed catalogs carry them. Lowe's is starting to carry them. Walmart's starting to carry some of the other types. So local stores will carry those too.
Very
So
good. Another
very
table
good.
in the greenhouse,
Uh-huh.
and I see water sort of bubbling out from a tank down below. Tell us what this one does that's sort of unique.
Okay, this is a flood table. We use these tables once our seeds have actually grown into plants, and then when they get enough size on them, they get their first couple sets of true leaves on them. On the aqua mats, they don't really soak up enough water that they need every day, so we put them in these flood tables. And this just helps to keep folks from having to come in and water so much. But when it's extremely hot outside, this will just saturate the plant, and then the water, you can see the water coming in right now, but it also allows the water to drain back out. And it's just like it says, it floods them and lets the water back out. So it gives them a chance to soak up all the water they can, and then it will come back out.
Okay.
Also, we use these a lot when we're doing sweet corn production on plastic. We use these a whole lot to get our seeds to germinate, those type of things, but it keeps that corn. It's just so much easier, because that corn sucks up so much water. It's so much easier to use these beds for that.
So as these plants get larger, they have more of a water demand.
Yes.
And they need to be more frequently watered. So this thing,
Right.
you flood the table, it gets a big drink of water,
Yes.
and then the water goes back down, so
Yep.
you don't keep the plant too
Right,
wet.
because you don't want to keep it saturated. You don't want that root system to stay wet. You don't want to cause disease problems, but it will just suck it up, and then it just lets all that water back
And
out.
then when it drains back into this
Drains back
container,
into
so
this
it's
tank.
actually recirculating,
Yes, it's
recycling
it's
that
recycling
water.
the water.
Will this water sometimes have fertilizer in it too?
This water, sometimes we will put fertilizer in this. We use just it's a basic greenhouse fertilizer. This is just the same thing that you would use like Miracle Grow or something like that. So sometimes we do use that and fertilize our plants that way also. Yes.
Wow, well it looks like you guys are set up to do just about anything. You start from seed, and you can grow out these transplants, take care of all their water needs. A fairly automated system here.
Yep.
Reduces the risk, I guess, of overwatering
Yes.
and underwatering, but does require electricity. So
Yes.
if the power goes out, you need to be on alert.
Yes, you do.
All right, very good. Okay, Crystal, it's time to start those plants.
Right.
And tell me, why is it so important, or what are the advantages to starting your own plants from seed versus buying them from an unknown source?
Okay. One of the reasons I tell folks that it's a good thing to start your own seed is, first of all, you know what you're getting. Because, and what I mean by that is you're getting a good, hopefully disease-free plant. And you have a bigger variety. You get what you want, because sometimes we are limited on what we can get at our local stores around here.
True.
And if there's a specific variety that you're wanting, you can't necessarily get that. So if you get seed, you're getting more bang for your buck too. You can get a pack of seed, $2 or $3, but within that packet, hopefully you're going to get somewhere from 25 to 50 seeds. So you can start as many as you want or as little as you want. So that's a lot of the reason.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, okay, then let's get started here.
Okay.
We're in the greenhouse,
Uh-huh.
and I guess the first decision we need to make is, what kind of container do
Okay.
I need to have? So
Okay.
how do I decide what size container I need for a
What
given
you-
particular vegetable crop?
Okay, so at home, most folks, what I tell folks is that, use what you have around the house. You don't have to run out and buy things. You can use whatever you have. For example, we have an egg carton here, and these egg cartons, they're wonderful to start tomatoes, pepper plants, something like that in at home. First, make sure you sterilize them, and you can use a bleach water solution on that. When you're doing a large quantity of things, we use, 9 parts water and 1 part bleach on that. So it's really,
Okay.
really diluted. And that bleach will evaporate all of that. So, anyhow, you can use an egg carton, just poke holes in the bottom here. And egg cartons, the reason I use them is they're so easy. Just punch holes in the bottom here. You can use those to start out with. You can use a Cool Whip container or something like that. It's just the same as this type of plastic. Just make sure that it has holes in it. Good drainage. You can see how many holes are in this. Good drainage. And you're going to hear us saying that over and over and over. Good drainage.
Drainage is
Make
important.
sure that you have holes in that. Right.
Okay.
So,
Very
we
good.
have several types of containers here. This is a biodegradable container. It's just called a Jiffy Pot. Most of your hardware stores, Walmart, Lowe's, those type of places, True Values, they're starting to carry these. They're so much easier for folks, and there's nothing to throw away, essentially. This can go straight into the ground.
Oh, very
It'll break
convenient,
down.
yeah.
As soon as water hits it, it starts to break down. So if you're using this in the greenhouse, you have to be really, really careful not to keep these saturated because they will break down.
Okay.
These are mostly for outside use, and this is what you'll use when you get ready. Basically, you'll take your transplants to
Into a
harden off,
larger pot,
into a
something
larger
you
pot.
plant
Right.
dig a hole, set
Right.
that pot in it.
Right.
Very good.
Right.
Okay. So let's say that I want to grow, I want to start my tomato plants.
Okay.
Can I start with something this small, or do I need a larger tray?
Well, for tomatoes, we usually use something like the 72 count trays or these breakaway trays. And most folks at home, it's just easier, these breakaway trays. These are nice because if you want to do 6 of one variety, 6 of another, or you want to do tomatoes and pepper, however, it's just easier. These are nicer, much easier, but you do have to have the plastic tray underneath for these the breakaway trays because they will, when they get a little weight to them, they will
okay,
bust
so
apart.
you need some way to support them.
Uh-huh.
But is there a rule of thumb on
Yes.
what type plant fits a certain size cell?
Yes,
Okay,
there is.
what is that?
When your plants, when you're starting out your seedlings, something like this is fine. Of course, you could start out your tomatoes in something like this, essentially. Even the egg carton, you will start out in that, but you have to move up to a bigger size, or a bigger
Okay.
flat. So
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like there's all kinds of options out there.
there are.
And I'm sure they vary in price.
Uh-huh.
Now, if I make the investment, can I reuse this next year?
Yes, that's the wonderful thing about these. Even those type, this is different plastic. It's a little bit stronger. Even the breakaway trays, any of these except for the peat pots and, of course, even your egg cartons can be used. The big thing is sterilization. Make sure you kill any bacteria, any fungus, anything like that that may be growing inside of those pots. From
So
the
if I
previous
have
year.
disease at the end of my spring
Yes.
growing period,
Yes.
that can still be a
It can-
live, viable
yes,
organism?
it will still be alive on there. It's carried through the soil. It's carried through the plants. It's carried on your hands. It's carried, within the plastic. Just make sure you sterilize.
Okay, big important point
Yes.
then. All right, so I've made a selection. I know what size pot I need for my tomato plants. I'm
Right.
very interested in.
Uh-huh.
All right, what is it important to know something about the media,
Yes.
the mix?
It is.
Okay, what do I need to know?
The media that you choose, of course, we don't want to go right out in our front yard and dig up soil and use out of the ground. The most important things, there's several components in there. A good growing media is going to have some type of potting mix in it, essentially. It's not just going to be a composted mixture, but it will have some type of vermiculite, some type of perlite, and those things are going to help to build stronger root systems on your plant, which is what we want for our seedlings. This type of mix that we use is called a Pro Mix. It has a biofungicide in it, and that just helps also to keep the disease down within the soil. You can use their good type of mixes. Miracle Grow is really, really good. You can buy that locally, hardly, anywhere now. The Jiffy mixes, those are also good. The wonderful thing about most of those mixes are they will have they already have some type of fertilizer in them. Whether it be an osmocote, a slow release fertilizer, or just like the water soluble, it's already mixed in fertilizer.
So a small amount of fertilizer to help that plant get started.
Yes.
But now that's not usually enough fertilizer to grow them completely out.
No,
Okay.
it's just a small amount to get them started.
Okay. Now,
So-
if I was interested in starting my plants organically, I need to be careful and read the label of a lot of these products?
Yes.
Because you just mentioned Pro Mix that had a fungicide in it.
You can get the Pro Mix that does not have anything in it.
Okay.
We just choose to use it with the fungicide in it. It's a little more expensive, but it's a better product for what we need because we are growing on a large scale for our field research.
But folks need to just make sure they read
Yes.
the label.
Read the label on everything. All of your fertilizers, those type of things, read the labels.
Okay. What's the biggest concern with going out in my front yard and digging up some soil that looks pretty good? Are there disease problems that can come along with that? And do most of our soils out in our front lawn or out in our garden, do they drain well enough in a greenhouse?
No. What you're going to go out and you're going to get out of your topsoil, straight out of the ground, you're going to bring in disease, and you're not going to have good drainage, and it's going to be really, really compacted. Now, this soil that we have right here, you can see how loose this is. This has a lot of, has some coconut core and stuff in it. So, one thing with this type of mix, you have to keep it saturated in the containers when you're getting ready to fill up your flats, because, it's just like powder right now. You have to get that good and wet and keep it saturated. And you want to keep this, of course, for us, because we have such a large bin full of it, we keep it covered to keep disease out also. That's another huge thing.
Okay. All right. Well, now that I've selected the right media to use,
Right.
Is there any tricks or anything that is really important to watch when you're filling these trays? I mean,
Yes.
I normally would want to just pour it over it, pack it in, make sure it's good and firm.
Right.
Is that a bad
No,
practice?
that's not a good thing. When we, your growing media, you have your growing media down in there. You want to fill them up until the lines on the top are full there. Okay, and you don't want to be slamming them down or stacking your containers on top of each other. We don't want compaction. All right, because when you have compaction and you put those little seedlings down in there, it can cause, first of all, they may not germinate properly, or your seed may get so far down in there, it's just going to sit there and it will rot. So you could lose your seeds. And a good rule of thumb, what I tell folks is when they're working in my greenhouse or I'm trying to teach them, use the first bend on your finger. When you're putting seeds down in there, or a pencil or something, the first bend on your finger. Always use that. Don't go any deeper than that.
Oh, just to create the hole for the
Just to
seed.
create the hole for the seed. Don't go any deeper than that. And that's usually a good rule of thumb, because you can tell then if your seed's going to germinate or not. You can always move the soil back a little bit from it.
Okay, well I can tell you right now, my problem has always been I've packed the cells too tight, too dense, because what you did was basically cover the cell,
And that's all you want to do.
and you didn't apply any more
You just
pressure.
want to sweep it off and
Okay.
don't apply any more pressure and compact the soil down in there.
All right,
Okay.
I've already discovered one of my biggest problems. with-
Another biggie along that line is these are labels, and you don't have to have these fancy labels like this. You can use popsicle sticks or something like that. But labels are really, really important. First of all, because you know what you have, especially like with peppers is a good example. If you're growing jalapeno peppers and then sweet banana peppers, folks can't tell the difference between their plants. And if somebody is going to go out and set those, essentially you can when the fruit comes on, but other than that, you can't really tell. But the other thing with like tomatoes, for example, if you have a variety you really, really like, and you lose that seed packet, this way we'll be able to know. And I always use just a Sharpie permanent marker and then an ink pen also, in case one of them rubs off. But you can use a popsicle stick or something like that too.
Okay, well, very good.
Yeah.
All right. Now, we've got our trays potted up. You've shown us how to create the little depression there, plant our seed. What sort of environmental conditions do we need now to get these plants started off right?
Okay, so temperature is huge. That's one of the biggest players here when we are just starting out. After we have selected our container, put our growing media in, we have to decide temperature. I know not everyone is going to have a greenhouse, but even inside of your home, there are things like with this egg carton we can use. First of all, this styrofoam creates a little more insulation. Of course, it's going to have a little more heat. But a good place to start seed is on top of the refrigerator, believe it or not. The heat from that refrigerator,
Okay.
it's going to keep a certain temperature on there. That's a good place to start them until they start getting their first true leaves on them. And then you need to have them inside of, that north-facing window or something to where they're getting good sunlight, getting that morning heat. You can use things like heating pads. You've seen the fancy grow mats we have. You can use a heating pad. Essentially, it's the same thing. If you have an old heating pad, put that down, and you can set this flat, and you'll want it to where it has direct contact with the bottom of that pot on there. So it's going to get that heat all the way through there. One of the biggest problems that we see when folks are doing this is they're either overwatering or not watering enough. Now, when you have them on a heat source like that, you want to make sure that they're getting adequate water, And what I tell folks is just to feel the top of the soil there, because you don't want it to be soaked, but you want it to feel a little moist when you feel that. You don't want the soil to sink back down in there and just stay.
So the soil needs to be damp.
It needs to be damp,
But if you see standing water, the pore space is filled with water, that's an indication you are too wet,
Yes, way too
and the
wet.
seed could rot, or
Yes.
you could have some disease
Right.
develop, and you're going
Right.
to lose that particular plant.
Right.
Okay. If you're going to use a heating pad or some sort of source like the top of a refrigerator, I mean, can we get too hot?
The chance of, when you're using a heating pad especially, a good temperature is going to be between 65, 70 is going to be good for starting out on your plants. You don't want any hotter than that. On top of your refrigerator, it's really not going to get too hot. When you're using the type of grow stand that we've got back there, the nice thing about those heat mats is it's got a regulator on the temperature, that you can set your thermostat however. The other thing is going to be the environment in your home. Whatever room you're growing in, you need to keep it at least 65 to 72 degrees in there. we like to keep it at least 72, something like that in here. You know, keep a good warm temperature. The other thing is going to be air circulation. You want airflow, and the reason you want it, you know, it's going to keep down disease. You want that, but it's going to also keep that soil to where it's not going to be constantly wet, you know. So
well, let's go back to let's go back to the light source. You talked about, you know, a window. Obviously, as soon as the seed germinates and you've got some leaves, that plant's looking for light.
Yes.
Can we use other external sources too?
Can.
I mean, you talked about your growth lights back here.
Yeah.
Fluorescent lights?
Fluorescent lightings are wonderful, even just light bulbs in a house, but fluorescent tends to work a little bit better. Once you see that first set of true leaves come on, you know, once the seedling, you see it emerge, is when we always start hitting them under the growth lights. Of course, they're going to get that natural sunlight, but they need a little bit more. You know, they like 12, some of them like 12 to 16 hours of sunlight a day for when they start getting germinated. So you can get those lights. I think we spent a total, I think I had $10 in each of those ballasts back there with the lights. You know, it's not extremely expensive. Something you can do in your basement, but most folks have lighting. You can use those type of lights. They seem to work wonderful for growing.
Well, I know I've tried to grow some plants at home, and I thought I was giving them adequate light, but the plants were really pretty spindly, pretty fragile looking. Is that because I just wasn't providing enough light?
That's
the
part
right kind of light?
That's part of the problem. The plants, when they don't get enough light, they get really leggy, and then they're really, really weak. You know, and it's really hard to get a good plant from that. So they need adequate sunlight. That's huge, along with the heat and the water.
Well, okay, let's talk about fertilization.
Okay.
Now, you mentioned that in a lot of growth media, it comes with, we'll call it a starter fertilizer.
It has just a starter. Most of them have just a slow release. It's an Osmocote type of fertilizer, and it's something that's only going to last 30 to 60 days. It's not going to stick with the plant. Miracle Grow is great, you know. It's a water-soluble fertilizer, and the big thing is read the label on that, folks. Read the label. On the back of that packet, you know, what we have here is just the Peters Professional. It's a Scott's brand. It's the same thing. It's a water-soluble. This is a 20-20-20 fertilizer, but, you know, we calculate for what we have going out into each of these beds and the flood table. So make sure you read the label on that. The slow release fertilizers, like I said, they'll last 30 to 60 days, but that's not going to be enough to carry your plant. Now, that's going to be good for your seedling. But after that seedling emerges, and then you see those first true leaves, okay? After that, when they start to get their second leaf growth, that's usually when I'll start to give them a little bit of fertilizer. And that's usually somewhere along, you know, 3-4 weeks after they have emerged through, because they've already got that slow release fertilizer in the soil. And then that's when I start to give them a little bit of fertilizer. Because if you give them too much, you're going to burn them up. If you don't give them enough, you're going to have spindly plants.
So will you fertilize them several times before you get to the transplant stage?
Several times before they even get to the transplant
But the big key is read the label.
Yes.
Generally, the instructions are pretty clear on how to mix it properly and the right dosage, so you don't, don't get a salt injury and things like that.
Right.
Okay. Very, very good. All right. So now we're getting ready to transplant. We've got these nice, beautiful, healthy plants in the right size cell. They've developed a nice root system. Can I just, on a nice, pretty Saturday, just take them straight from the greenhouse or the room in the house that I've been growing them and set them outside the ground?
No. What I always tell people is when you start to get to the dampening, hardening off process, what I do here and what I do at home with my plants is I take them out. You know, it's like a new baby. You know, you don't want to take it straight out from where it's nice and warm and, you know, take it right outside where it's going to be cold or whatever. You know, you adjust slowly. So we will go out with our plants. We'll take them outside on a day that is not extremely windy or something. Take them out for a couple hours the first day. Then the second day we go out for, you know, a few more hours. Of course, we're bringing them back in at night. Anytime the temperature is going to get below 40 degrees, you don't want them outside because it's going to kill your plants. So we take them out, we let them harden off, and I do this for 2 weeks. And then after 2 weeks, usually is when I take my plants and then I sit them out in the ground, making sure that the ground temperature is warm enough.
Okay, what are we talking, like it needs to be up around 50, 55 degrees or warmer than that?
Usually I like for it to be, you know, 60, 65 degrees outside. For it to be, you know, good and warm out.
That's air temperature.
Air temperature. That's not ground temperature. So we like for it to be, you know, good and warm.
Okay.
and then we will take our plants and put them out into the ground.
So this transition period is really, really important to get that plant prepared. I mean, so you sort of minimize some of the stress from
Right.
going from this nice, warm, cozy sort of environment
Right.
out there to the mean,
Right.
cruel world.
Even into, from your home, your basement, wherever you're growing at, from inside to outside, right. And then again, when you take them out, make sure you have, that label so that you know what you've got planted out there, so we don't get those peppers.
You don't want any surprises at the dinner
Right,
table.
right. Until we know what we've got for sure.
Very good. Well, Crystal, we really appreciate your time, and I think this is great information for anybody that's interested in starting plants from
Okay.
seed. Thanks.
Thank you.